Hi, and welcome to Tapped into Hudson. I'm Steve Lenox, and I'm the publisher of Tap into Hoboken, Tap into Bayonne, and Tap into Jersey City. We're glad to be back in the studio again this week. We've reached May, we've reached warmer weather, summer's coming, restrictions are loosening up, COVID vaccines are on the increase, COVID cases are on the decline. Hopefully we're getting back to some kind of normal. We're looking forward to a good summer, staying together, staying apart, whatever it takes to stay healthy. But beyond that, we want to talk news, and that's what we're here to do this week. And I've got Al Sullivan in the studio with me this week. Al, of course, is our reporter in Bayonne and in Jersey City. Al, it's been a busy couple of weeks since we had you in last.
Been very busy.
There's a lot of local news to cover.
A lot of local news.
Al, where I want to start today, I think, is with the immigration issue in Hudson County.
Okay.
This is an issue that's been going on, in some ways for many years.
Right.
Of course, the county commissioners has re-signed a contract or approved a contract with ICE back in 2020.
Right.
To keep the detainees there. And these, of course, are detainees that have various immigration issues.
Right.
There's been an outcry for years about letting them go, and that Hudson County shouldn't be in the business of detaining immigrants, right?
Well, the problem here is it goes back several years, and the last, this conflict came up in 2018 when they were proposing a 10-year contract, and the county said, we're going to try to find a way to shut it down. But Veneri, the chairman, had said, there's no guarantees because of elections coming up and a new board is going to take over, and we don't know what they're going to do. But the activists assumed that he meant they were going to close it down, and it didn't happen. So that's the backdrop of it. The population has gone from 800 in 2018 to 40, or around 50 now. So it isn't only a money issue, even though it supplies a lot of the salaries and covers a lot of costs. What it is that the county is butting heads with federal authorities, the federal legislators who have their own agenda, and they need to make an example of Hudson County and get all of the New Jersey places online so that they can go back to their continuity. We did our part. Right. Okay, it's really more about egos.
Okay. And now beyond the egos, and that always plays a part in politics and policy making, of course, but beyond that, there's this question of the detainees and where they go.
Right.
If Hudson County were to get rid of the contract, as some other counties have done, it's not that the doors to the jail and Kearney are going to be open and these men and women are going to be let go onto the streets. Where are they going to end up?
Well, the latest, most likely place is in Mississippi. Right. And the problem, this has been the argument that's been made, most of these detainees come from the New York region. By being in Hudson County, they are still accessible to their families, still accessible to their lawyers. If Hudson County shuts down the way Essex is planning to, then these detainees will be far from their resources. Many are just detainees because of immigration, but the complicating part is that many have some very serious crimes.
Right.
And that's the part why what I'm told is Biden's not making the move to just shut the thing down, because some of these people are serious criminals.
And of course, this was a big part of the conversation as 2020 came to an end also, we were heading into a new federal administration, and what would that look like in terms of immigration? But really, if we're paying attention to what's happening in Washington, not much has changed from Trump to Biden. At this point, it's early on in the administration.
Well, Obama was worse than Trump as far as he was wholesale. And many of the activists were afraid of Biden because they presumed he would just continue the Obama. Trump didn't invent it, he just continued it.
It was an issue he inherited
from
his
And he also expanded on some of the categories. But almost all of it was designed under the Obama administration, which is why the activists recently showed up at a Biden event and protested, because they realized that they're friends.
Right. And County Executive DeGise put out another message yesterday. He essentially called for calm, he called for patience, but it sounds like he's starting to come around a little bit, realizing that maybe now is the time to make a change. Is that kind of an accurate portrayal?
I think they finally had too much of the protests. In other words, the Veneri it's just not worth the effort of having 12-hour meetings with protesters.
It's not productive government anymore.
And the fact is, it's not that much of a finance. Again, it's a matter of what happens to the detainees. Some of the immigration groups, and I've talked to several of them, they understand that they're worried about some of them, but they can't publicly say that because they all need to be on one page.
Right. So again, County Executive DeGise may be coming up with a more humanitarian way of dealing with this issue. He's saying the doors aren't going to open, these folks aren't going home, wherever home may be.
Right.
We'd rather not have them locked up in Hudson County,
right.
But that's the best of a bad situation.
Right, absolutely. And Hudson County has improved its facilities more than almost any other facility in the country.
Okay.
And that was deliberate. There was a process. People had been hurt there, people had died there, and they deliberately improved the mental health and the food and medical attention. So it is a comparably humane place as opposed to other places they could be.
Al, thank you. Thanks for summing it up the way you did. We'll be right back for another segment with Al Sullivan.
Burns Brothers Memorials, Monuments, and Markers, 787 Tunley Avenue, Jersey City. Hudson County's only monument maker, serving all faiths and cemeteries. Design, studio, and large inventory on site. Cemetery inscriptions and custom orders welcome. Burns Brothers Memorials, Monuments, and Markers, 787 Tunley Avenue, just south of Secaucus Road. Craftsmanship that will last for all eternity. Burns Brothers, Jersey City, Albert H. Hopper, North Arlington. Visit us on the net. Consumer Carpets, 3408 Kennedy Boulevard in the Jersey City Heights, your one-stop store for residential and commercial floor treatments, carpeting, linoleum, tiles, laminates, hardwood floors, area rugs, remnants, all major brands, all in stock. Free estimates, same-day installation. Consumer Carpets, it's savings, selection, installation. Credit cards and debit cards accepted. Financing available. Consumer Carpets, price to fit your budget, installation to fit your schedule. On the net at consumercarpets.com. Consumer Carpets, Jersey City, 201-792-2712.
At Hudson Regional Hospital, we promise to be prepared for your emergency.
We promise to provide world-class robotic surgical care.
We promise to treat you like family.
To provide accurate diagnostic care.
To provide the most innovative orthopedic care at your doorsteps.
We promise to treat your baby like our own.
To never stop investing in the best of spinal care.
To be with you every step of the way.
Here at Hudson Regional Hospital, we promise to take care of our community.
Hi, and welcome back to Tapped into Hudson. Al, I want to launch right back into the conversation here. We just finished talking about ICE and the immigration issue in Hudson County. On a more positive note in Hudson County, kids got back to school yesterday in Jersey City and Bayonne.
Yes.
This is a long time coming. How did that look?
It looked real good.
Yeah.
Bayonne was particularly positive. Jersey City is still confused because they going back to a model that they established back last August, and they're still trying to work out the kinks. But it's a positive step. They didn't want to do it, and there was a lot of confusion, whereas Bayonne clearly said, we're going back. And they had the blessing of the union, which helped an awful lot. The Bayonne Union said, they did a tour of the facilities, and they had their problem areas, and when they saw that they were resolved, they spoke up and said, yes, we're approved. And so and then the kids themselves seem to be thrilled.
They're happy to be back with their friends. They're happy to be back to some normalcy, right?
Absolutely.
Whatever normal looks like. And of course, we'll see over the next 6 weeks until the school year's over what it looks like. But, I think you hit the nail on the head there. We talk about coordination and communication between the teachers or the teachers union and the administration itself. And this is a story that's playing out, right? In community after community after community, issue after issue. But when we have the unions and the school board starting to coordinate together, like they did in Bayonne, like they finally did in Jersey City,
eventually,
it seems like they can come to that consensus and they can get kids back in the classroom where I think most of us think they belong.
Well, I mean, the problem is that remote learning is a Band-Aid. There are people who get left behind, and the most vulnerable are the ones who hurt. I mean, a good student's going to do well no matter what.
Right.
Okay.
And of course, in Jersey City, they had to overcome some, and Bayonne to an extent, they had to overcome digital divide. And we spoke with Board President Musab Ali about that earlier this year, making sure kids had laptops in their hands and the devices they needed. Hopefully, that's all behind us now, right? And the kids are back in school and they're going to stay there.
Well, it appears to be. It will. This is a temporary get them back in, get them back toward normalcy. Really, the ideal thing will be in September when they're hoping everything
back
just
full-time and back to normal school years. Al, let's switch gears again. Right before we started the cameras rolling, you mentioned Hudson County Community College.
Right.
And you had a conversation with Hudson County Community College President Chris Reber.
Right.
He's got some amazing things going on there in Journal Square and also in North Bergen, I think is where we're checking.
It's the West New York, Union City border. Yeah, they are, what the discussion was basically how they came out of COVID and some real important lessons. I had spoken with him about a year ago or a little more a year ago about future plans. And this conversation was how those things altered. And he said, for all of the issues of COVID, what it did is it made them refocus and allowed them to look at what they do and be more effective. And they have some big plans.
They mentioned, I think it was earlier this week, they announced a new program where their students at both campuses will be able to learn virtually together. 1 week, though, the professor will be in the classroom in Jersey City, 1 week at the North Hudson campus.
Yeah, he was talking about that today. It's because they expanded their technology to a level where, in other words, when the teacher's not in that campus, they'll have a coach and they'll have a technician. But the camera will follow the professor around the room, so that it'll be as if it's like almost like virtual reality TV.
And some of the social safety nets that some of these students need, beyond the classroom learning. I think that's really the point of the conversation I want to get to is the college has gone so far beyond just classroom learning, hasn't it? It's really had a major impact on the students' lives.
Well, they decided that they can't just can't just be education because there's so many social needs to help get students to basically the same level, and that's what the focus. They opened a center 2 weeks ago that allows them to search out financial aid, also get them food stamps if they need it, if they need some sort of financial assistance at home for rent or something else. So that and even clothing, they have a clothing closet. They are treating the whole student rather than just as an education. He called it, we're a family.
That's right.
That's largely what he's doing.
Al, we'll certainly look forward to that story. Before we wrap up this segment and your time on the show today, you've been to some great business openings in Bayonne in the past couple of days.
Well, the interesting one was this Sunday, which was basically somebody who had opened a community center of her own in Jersey City, got banged by COVID, and then opened and found that it was still viable, and so she opened another one in Bayonne, and it looks very promising. There have been a couple of other businesses uptown, which shows that the development there is drawing interest. There was one massage nail place, and then recently a hair cutter, that are specifically relocating into neighborhoods where new development, which is...
Well, and I think that's the point, Al. In the last 25 seconds, I notice on our stories when you write about a nail salon or a hair salon opening up, kind of get some knockback, you get some criticism. Oh, is that all we can bring to Bayonne? But it does show that there's a certain vibrancy happening up and down Broadway.
Absolutely. That is among the businesses. There'll be, because of the COVID and the restaurant, everybody's sort of tiptoeing. But they'll come too, because if they're coming for the residents for other businesses, that will be there also.
If the disposable income's being spent in one place, they'll be spent somewhere else. Al, thank you so much for joining us. Thank you as always for the reporting, and we look forward to some good stories coming up.
Okay.
We'll be right back in our next segment with Chris Halleron from Tap Into Hoboken.
cutting edge. Surgical care is right here in Secaucus.
Robotic surgery is safer.
Shorter hospital stays.
Smaller abdominal incisions, the size of an M&M. Here at Hudson Regional, we provide world-class robotic surgical care.
Hi, and welcome back to Tapped into Hudson. I'm Steve Lenox. I'm the publisher of Tap into Jersey City, Tap into Bayonne, and Tap into Hoboken. Before I forget, we want to make sure we remind our viewers and our readers about the historic downtown Jersey City Farmers Market. It's happening every Monday and Thursday at the Nork Avenue Pedestrian Plaza from 4 o'clock to 8 o'clock. Great fresh produce, great seafood, great plants, all kinds of great products. So please make sure you get down there and support some local farmers and some local businesses. With that, I want to turn to our next guest, and that's, of course, Chris Halleron. He's our reporter at Tap into Hoboken. Chris, how are you today?
I'm doing well, Steve. How are you?
Good, Chris. Thank you so much for joining us. Thank you for joining us remotely, of course. Chris, before we go into some Hoboken issues, I want to talk about the passing of Mayor Anthony Russo in April. He had a huge impact on the city of Hoboken that continues to be felt and probably will for many generations to come. Can you talk about Mayor Russo a little bit?
Anthony Russo certainly loomed large on the Hoboken political landscape. He was my introduction to Hoboken politics when I moved to town in 1997. That was right after his re-election. And it just it really showed me the tone of Hudson County politics. I bet you Al Sullivan has a lot more to say about these issues. Al was in there in the scrum covering these topics. But yeah, he was a very complicated person. He was a very powerful leader in Hoboken. He certainly had his issues. And, Councilman Michael Russo, Third Ward Councilman Michael Russo is his son and remains a big fixture in Hoboken politics. And it was a pretty big tree that fell in the passing of Anthony. I know we ran a piece from one of Mayor Russo's former opponents in a political election, Frank Marciano, who talked about how aggressive Russo could be and how sort of cutthroat it could be when you were in the political realm, but then showed the other side, the duality of him, the humanity behind him, certainly in his later years. It was a really powerful piece, and it was nice to see such an authentic portrayal of Mayor Russo, and it really registered with a lot of our readers.
Well, of course, Chris, I mean, you mentioned the challenges and you mentioned the complications, and we don't need to dwell on that. We've all made mistakes, and Mayor Russo certainly made some mistakes along the way. But you talk about the duality and the heart that he had inside him. And of course, the Russo Civic Center loomed large there in the heart of the Third Ward for a long time. But what about the redevelopment? I mean, he really spurred a lot of that on, didn't he?
He certainly did. A lot of Hoboken didn't have an open waterfront until Mayor Russo's time in office. So he opened up a lot of that. He made sure that Hoboken had an accessible waterfront, which is a mission that continues to this day. He also was in place when a lot of the heavy redevelopment started taking place. A lot of the, redevelopment in Hoboken had been a long-running issue. It sort of came to its fore in the Russo years and really picked up steam, and Hoboken became the desirable real estate location that it is today, and a really strong real estate market. And a lot of that has to do with the moves that were made under Mayor Russo.
Of course, we hope Mayor Russo rests in eternal peace, and we send our thoughts and prayers to his family, including Councilman Michael Russo, who's been he's been a leader in Hoboken himself. But Chris, you mentioned the waterfront there, and that's an issue that continues to pay dividends from a local media point of view. The pavilion out at the end of Pierre Park, that became a story again yesterday, didn't it? Why don't you talk to our readers and viewers?
It did. What's going on with the gazebo at the end of Pierre is that there's a gym called Prime Cycle, which is, what had happened in COVID is there were a lot of restrictions put on gyms statewide, nationwide almost. And so here in Hoboken, the administration did a lot of work to sort of find a place where some of these classes can continue, and they can continue to have a revenue stream and continue to have clients show up and take their classes. The problem with Prime Cycle is that it's a cycle-based, equipment-based facility. So they needed a place to store the cycles. They had initially done that in the Hoboken Little League in the batting cages, and that became problematic once the Little League season came back around. So after a little hemming and hawing and some social media noise there, the city was able to find a new location, which happens to be the gazebo at the end of Pier A, probably one of the most iconic and public places that we have in Hoboken. So Fund for Better Waterfront, which is a very principled activist organization when it comes to ensuring free space, public space on the waterfront, sort of poked their head in and said, look, this really, the letter of the law, this is not the way this gazebo should be used. And it's become an issue, that's sort of divided readership, at least, that we could tell you from an anecdotal point of view. And it's really kind of testing the will of the administration and the will of Fund for Better Waterfront to see what actually works best for the people of Hoboken.
Sometimes maybe it goes back to no good indeed goes undone, right? I think Mayor Ball's administration was trying to help small businesses. You've got this space on the waterfront. Of course, you've got Fund for a Better Waterfront, making sure that space is being used in an appropriate way. You mentioned something very, very particular there, Chris, and this is what we're going to talk about in the next segment, and that's social media, how some of this issue has kind of played itself out over social media. And now there's some legislation come out of Hoboken City Hall about social media and how elected officials deal with their followers. We'll be right back, and we'll continue this conversation with Chris Halleron.
Newport, the luxury waterfront community on the Hudson River, offers the quality of life you deserve in 10 high-rise rental towers with amenities such as the on-site Newport Path subway, light rail and ferry service, Newport Town Square, 3 playgrounds, dog run, upscale restaurants, retail giants like Sears, JCPenney, Macy's, and Target. Morton Williams Supermarket is just outside your front door. A health and fitness club, spa, skating rink, and medical facilities are also on site. NewportNJ.com. Enjoy the New York skyline from Newport Town Square. Manhattan is just one path stop away or quick ride through the Holland Tunnel. Nursery and private elementary schools all on site. 12-screen movie theater at the Newport Center Mall. Want to visit Newport? Stay at the Westin or Marriott Hotel. Go to NewportNJ.com for details. Newport has luxurious towers, great restaurants, shopping, New York skyline views, schools, playgrounds, a marina and yacht club, gym, spa, fine wine, fine living. It's incredible. It's you. NewportNJ.com. Newport, live like you want.
Hudson TMA reminds you that a bicycle is considered a vehicle. When you ride a bike, you must obey the rules of the road.
Ride single file in the same direction as traffic. Obey traffic signs and signals. Signal your turns and look behind you before you turn. And always stay alert.
Okay, thank you, and welcome back to Tapped Into Hudson. I'm Steve Lenox. I'm the publisher of Tap Into Jersey City, Tap Into Bayonne, and Tap Into Hoboken. For this final segment, we have Chris Halleron coming back with us. Chris, at the end of that last segment, we kind of teased this social media ordinance that was announced earlier today by Councilman Cohen, Councilwoman Jabor, and Councilman Russo. Can you tell our readers and viewers what that ordinance is about?
Sure. This stems from Hoboken's political entities are very active on social media, which makes my job easy because everything they do is put up there and I can scroll through it and see what they're doing. But there's a lot of animosity in that realm, and it has caused some friction in the past to the point where at least one councilman, and he's named in the ordinance, Councilman Mike DeFusco, has blocked several I'm going to specify accounts. He has blocked certain accounts from his own social media. So Cohen, Russo, and Jabor have put forth this ordinance saying, hey, you really can't block your constituents. You can't block people from social media. It's a First Amendment issue, so on and so forth. I specify Twitter accounts because in the Hoboken political realm on social media, there are a lot of burner accounts and a lot of bots that sort of get really aggressive and attack and sort of play out these political arguments online. And we're privy to it because we're tagged in most of it, and so we get to watch most of it firsthand. We've been the subject of them before. People who don't like our coverage have come after us on social media. So, it's kind of an issue where you consider the source and you step back and evaluate it. But DeFusco had gone as far as to block people, and that became an issue with the three council people putting forth this resolution.
Chris, you said it so well there. I mean, being abused or attacked or whatever word you may use on social media, it's something we're certainly no strangers to, as you said. I mean, the messages that I get and that I know you get, and I know Al gets at times, it's unbelievable what people are comfortable saying to us, people they don't know, that I like to think we're just trying to do the right thing. But you know, there's a call for transparency as well, I guess, and that's really what the council people that are pushing this ordinance are looking for. Is that about accurate?
I'd say that's their angle. You know, if you go to the Hoboken website, you have the email addresses for all the council people there. So it's not that they're not accessible. And DeFusco, who I spoke with right after this came out, he said that, you know, this is not a taxpayer-funded account. This is a Twitter account. This is something that he manages personally, and therefore it shouldn't be privy to, you know, overreach by what he called overreach by the council people in question here. So we'll see how it plays out. It's an interesting point. You know, some people will see it as a bit petty. That's Hoboken politics, and that's Hoboken politics on social media. It's very petty and very involved and very political.
Absolutely, Chris. It's a conversation we have over and over. And thank you so much for covering it the way you are, with the fairness and the openness and the accuracy. Chris, we got some good news yesterday from Governor Phil Murphy in Trenton that he's loosening up some of these restrictions. I believe it's May 7th, I want to say. You're going to be able to sit at the bar again, which is a place you've been several times, right? I'm very comfortable saying.
You covered up a lot, Steve. Yes. We spent a lot of time on either side of the bars of Hoboken.
Both sides of the bar.
Most of the people we've been talking to throughout the pandemic have said, you know, every incremental increase in seating has been great for them, but they really want their bar back. That's a huge aspect. If you look at the restrictions that Hoboken had pre-COVID, because they're all tight spaces. So when you still have these rules where you can't have 6 feet, having that bar is essential for a lot of these places, given their layouts and given their you know, spaces at a premium, and they need to optimize every inch of it. So this is big news, really big news for the likes of Hoboken, Jersey City, really tight, densely populated areas where real estate's at a premium.
We're giving our residents, again, the opportunity to go out and you know, celebrate some togetherness and loosening of restrictions. With the caveat, though, right, we still need to be careful. We need to wear our masks when we're inside places, take them off to have a drink, obviously. We need to get our vaccinations. How are vaccinations going in Hoboken?
There's a marked difference between the initial rollout of the vaccination and the rates that we're seeing now. You know, we're seeing a lot of openings, a lot of heavy advertising or outreach advertising and publication of dates and availability of vaccinations. So that's really, really good news, a really good sign. We have a lot of people getting back on the bus and on the train, going back to work in the city. So there is a degree of normalcy being restored. Again, it has to be very prudent, and it has to be done carefully and still maintain certain protocols so that we can continue to have this improvement in this situation. We're still seeing numbers that were, you know, double-digit numbers per day. They've in caseloads. They've gone down a bit in recent times, and most people would attribute that to the vaccinations. But so it's all positive, but it's still out there, and we still have to be cognizant of it. We still have, people below the age of 16 who can still contract it and carry it. So this is not over, but these are all very, very positive steps for an economic sector, and particularly in Hoboken, Jersey City, that really drives the economy.
Chris, thank you so much. I think you wrapped it up with a nice bow there at the end of the conversation. Of course, as you said, we don't know where COVID's going, but please, if you haven't, get vaccinated. At least very strongly consider getting vaccinated. Read the information. If you have any questions, there's plenty of resources out there. With that, we're going to wrap up this show this week. We thank you so much for following Tap into Hoboken, Tap into Jersey City, and Tap into Bayonne, and we look forward to seeing you next week. Thank you.